Hello everyone and welcome back to a new video on my channel. In this video I would like to talk about photographing Comet C2025A6. So right now you can observe and photograph this comet in the night sky, and about a week ago I uploaded a video about photographing this comet. So I've captured this comet with two different astrophotography setups. So on the one hand, a setup that costs $1,500, and on the other side I've used a setup that costs 5,000 euros. And I've compared both setups in this video, and I've captured the comet with both setups. So if you're interested in this video, definitely make sure to check out this video. And under this video, there were a lot of questions about photographing this comet, about camera settings, planning to capture this comet, and therefore I made the decision to actually share this video. So in this video, I'm just planning to talk about a few tips when planning to capture this comet with your camera, for example. Right now it's cloudy outside, so unfortunately I cannot capture this video outside, therefore I'll have to do it here. So in this video I'd like to share a few tips with you. So first of all, I would like to start with the first tip. So right now it is a bit challenging to capture the comet, because right now when planning to capture the comet right after sunset, the comet is quite low to the horizon, and the longer you'll wait, the lower the comet will be to the horizon, which is definitely a problem when capturing this comet. Therefore, right now you can capture the comet right after sunset or in the morning. And this is already my first tip for you. Try to capture the comet when the comet is the highest in the night sky. So I've captured the comet for around 2 hours, I guess. Between these different images, there were a few clouds, which means the total exposure time is around half an hour, unfortunately. But when taking a closer look at the images I've captured, I've realized that the higher the comet is in night sky, the better the images are. So in the beginning my images were very sharp and it was definitely quite good, but in the end the images were not that good because the comet was quite close to the horizon. Therefore, try to capture the comet when it's the highest in night sky. So for example, right after sunset or in the morning. So this is my first tip for you. So it definitely has a big impact on your final results. The next question is about a question that many people have asked me down below in the comments, and that is about the exposure time. Astrophotography is already challenging, but photographing these comets is even more challenging. And in astrophotography, the problem is that Earth is rotating, therefore we need a tracking mount. But when planning to capture comets, not only Earth is rotating, but also the comet is moving. And most probably, most people of you know that, but when capturing the comet, most people are not sure about that. Because that is definitely something that you have to keep in mind. Because I often see that beginners or general astrophotographers try to capture a comet, but when planning to capture the comet, they use an exposure time of 5 minutes. And that is a problem because the comet is moving. And when using an exposure time of, let's say, 5 minutes, your comet will not be sharp in your images, which is definitely a problem. So for sure, the stars might be round, but the comet is not sharp anymore. Therefore, in this case, I'd recommend to use an exposure time where the comet is still very sharp. For sure, that really depends on the exposure time that you're using. When using a very wide field lens, for example, let's say 50 millimeters, and when planning to capture the comet with this focal length, you can use a longer exposure time, that's for sure, when using a star tracker, because that is important. But when using a very high magnification, so let's say a telescope with a focal length of more than 1,000 millimeters, that is definitely something that you have to keep in mind. When using very high magnification, try to use a lower or shorter exposure time, because that's very important. For me personally, when capturing the comet, I've used a single exposure time of 1 minute, and that definitely worked quite well. So I've used the ASCAR ASCII-A55 telescope in combination with the CWO ASI 533 MC Pro, and it was definitely a good image, and an exposure time of 1 minute was definitely a great choice. But just keep that in mind when using a very high magnification. Try to use a shorter overall total exposure time, so single exposure time. So that is definitely, I would definitely recommend for you. The next tip is about the conditions, and this is a mistake that unfortunately a lot of people are doing, and that is about light pollution. So light pollution is something that is very important when talking about astrophotography, because light pollution is a problem when planning to capture these deep sky objects. So when planning to capture these comets in the night sky, try to escape the city light pollution. Some people might not think that the difference is that big but trust me, when escaping the city light pollution, your images will be so much better of this comet. So try to go to a place with less light pollution, because that will definitely have a positive impact on your final results, especially when planning to capture this comet with your camera. The next aspect, or the next tip, is especially for those of you who are planning to capture wide field images of this comet. And when planning to capture wide field images of the comet, I'd recommend to include a bit of foreground or landscape into your final images. When planning to capture images of the comet with a telescope, for sure, it's challenging to include a little foreground, but in this case, when using a telescope, you'll have the comet quite big in your field of view. But when planning to do wide field astrophotography, when planning to capture the comet with a wide field lens, I'd not recommend to only capture the comet. So then I recommend to include a bit of foreground and landscape in your image, because that makes your image a bit more interesting, and definitely that will be a bit better. So try to include a tree, a forest, a lake, something in that range, because that definitely has a positive impact on your final results. Just want to mention that. The last tip I would like to talk about is about the overall exposure time. When planning to capture this comet, I'd recommend to capture the longest possible exposure time that you can collect. So, if there are clear skies, which means there are no clouds, and you have enough time, try to spend a lot of time on capturing this comet, because that will definitely help you. I've checked my images that I've captured, and I've compared the single light frames and the stacked light frames. When planning to capture these comets, the overall exposure time is very important. So if you have clear skies all night long, not just capture the comet for 10 minutes, try to collect a longer exposure time, because that will help you to make more structures visible in this comet. For sure, as I have mentioned, the comet will be quite close to the horizon in the end, but generally speaking, I would recommend to capture the longest possible exposure time. So these are the tips I've planned to share with you. I really hope that these tips were helpful for you and interesting. And if you have already captured the comet, definitely feel free to share that down below in the comments. And definitely feel free to share which equipment you have used for capturing this comet. And if you have any further questions about photographing this comet, definitely feel free to ask me down below in the comments, and it will definitely help you. If you would like to further support me, you can now become a member of my channel. Becoming a member of my channel will really support me, and your support really means a lot to me. So if this video was interesting and helpful to you, I would really appreciate a like and a subscription. Otherwise, thank you so much for watching, and until next time, clear skies, Felix.